Hello and welcome to Warframe. My name is Todd, also known as Major Mech, and this is of course Warframe. Last time we did a Void Fissure to show off kind of a little bit how relics work. We'll probably come back more in depth on that later when we're kind of kitted out a little bit better and have some better weapons and maybe have some better mods. This time around we're going to do our Junction, show off what that is like. We're also going to talk a little bit about mods, how they kind of interact with things. The kind of the major things about builds and whatnot, and what else? I know I had something. Oh well, I'll think about it when we're talking about mods here. So, the big thing about mods in Warframe is
Operator, you have remembered well how the Tenno arm themselves.
there are some very specific choices that you can go with when you select your mods, and there are many different mods and many different ways to build your mods. To like put in your mods, because by the time you're done with a weapon, for instance, or a warframe, typically you'll be able to fill up all 8 slots here, but you'll still have lots of mods to choose from. Now we currently don't have lots of mods, but we will later on in the game, and choosing what ones to go in what weapons is really dependent on kind of how you go about things. So for a bow, for instance, you probably wouldn't really have magazine capacity because you only have 1 in the magazine, so we're just going to take that off. Ammo maximum is okay because bows don't have a lot of ammo. Critical chance is good. Reload speed is fine because you do actually reload with a bow. It's the amount of time it takes to put it, knock another arrow. And ammo maximum affects how many arrows you're able to carry. I don't know if 5% actually does anything just yet, but we're not worried about that. The big thing that I did want to make a note of is currently there are lots of accepted builds out there for kind of like accepted and well-known builds out there for different weapons and whatnot. The most common for weapons would be critical builds that focus on your critical chance, your critical multiplier, and being able to hit very large numbers. And the other type of build would be status builds, which focus on your status chance. And then of course there's the final type of build, which would be the hybrid of the two, where you focus on either critical or status. Now I'm just making a note of this because we currently don't have mods to be able to do it, but if you have the mods to do things like that, it's best to focus on either one or the other if you're able to, just because that will kind of dictate how the weapon functions, and each weapon kind of has starting stats which will benefit one of those builds, usually. So for instance, our Skana at base, let's see, it has 5% crit chance and 10% status chance, meaning that more than likely you'd probably want to build the Skana more around status than you would crit, because the crit is really low, whereas the Heat Sword also has status chance. But for our Paris, for instance, our Paris at base, when we're looking at it in the equip screen, has a lot of critical chance, meaning that if we focused on crit with our Paris, that would be probably the best thing to do. So those are the main builds for weapons. For warframes, it's much more complicated. You focus a lot into things like how survivable your frame is versus how your abilities are affected by some of the things that you throw on there. For now, we're going to take that off. I'm not going to focus on armor for Volt because he doesn't have enough to really make it worth it.
Tenno,
But
there's a time-limited mission alert available. Check
because
navigation.
we have redirection now, I am going to buff up redirection with the little bit of endo that we've got. So this is our mod screen. I did show off how to upgrade mods previously. You can sort through mods by these icons here, which kind of show off Warframe, primary weapon, secondary weapon, melee weapon, stances, Exilus mods, which I don't know, I do have one of those, but don't really have an Exilus slot to put that in yet. I'll talk about those if we get an Exilus adapter. We have Sentinel mods, which I made a note of previously, which we will probably get when we do the Junction. Companion mods, which is again something we'll talk about later, and duplicates. Duplicates is for getting rid of duplicates of the mods. Typically you don't really need more than one type of of the mod, but I hold on to a couple extras just in case. You never know what happens, but we're going to upgrade, not Reflection, but Redirection. Redirection is a great mod to upgrade early on. Another one would be Vitality, but we don't have Vitality currently. So we're going to just upgrade that. Let's see, how far can we go? We can go up to 150 endo plus 7,000 credits will get us plus 200% shield capacity. Now, that's a huge jump from 40 to plus 200%. Our Volt should be a lot more survivable now that he's got just a little bit more armor. So, I mean, a little bit more shields. It should also be noted that there are other things, and the thing about Warframe is there's lots of intricacies and things that kind of junction together. I made a small note previously in the last episode about how if you take and set down an electric shield, if you hit it with shock, enemies who pass through it will take damage. You can also pick that shield up and walk around with it, hitting enemies with an electric shield, and that's pretty cool. So there's lots of little intricate interactions like that. Another good example would be, for instance, armor and the way health and shields interact. So armor only affects your health. It does not affect your shields. Shields are independent of armor. So in the later part of the game where enemies hit much, much harder, shields are not as effective as health and armor are. And that is something to definitely take into consideration when making a choice of like what you're trying to improve for your survivability. I would highly suggest focusing on health and armor if you have a frame that really needs it. But Volt does not really have the best armor, so focusing on health and armor is not really the greatest choice. And that's kind of just touching on builds a little bit. You really want to play into the strengths of your frames and your weapons to make sure that you're getting the best out of them. If failing that you're really terrible at making builds like I am, you can always look them up. There's tons of people out there who make really great builds. One of my favorites is a guy called MC Gamer CZ. And there's some other ones like Tactical Potato and whatnot, and they're great for making fantastic builds. I love seeing some of the crazy things they come up with. In the meantime, though, I also did want to make a note of, what was it? Our starting platinum. So when you start Warframe, you get, let's see if I can't go over to the market and show it off. You get 50 platinum. So this 50 platinum is, a lot of people will tell you what to buy with it. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a suggestion. You either buy something cosmetic or buy Warframe and weapon slots. I most highly suggest Warframe and weapon slots. You can find them in the slots section here, or you can go to your Warframe slots and figure it out. Warframe slots are 20 platinum each, meaning that you can only hold so many Warframes before it gets filled up. You can check your inventory to see. Let's see how many we start out with. So we start out with 2 slots, and you can buy Warframe slots right here. So we'll only be able to hold Volt and 1 other Warframe. That's not great, so I want to buy 1 more. So now I have 1 more Warframe slot. I could buy another Warframe slot. Let's see. We don't have a lot of weapon slots either, but less Warframe slots. My second suggestion would actually probably buy some weapon slots. I'm going to buy 2 sets of weapon slots, which will pretty much eat up all of my platinum here. That would be pretty much what I would make a suggestion of for you. You can choose to buy whatever you want. There's tons of cosmetics that you can't get usually, and there's tons of other things. But Warframe and weapon slots will be the main thing that you'll want from platinum, like early on, because you really won't be able to hold Warframes or weapons as effectively if you don't have them, and you'll need them. Alright, so I think I pretty much covered... Oh, now I just remembered what that one thing was. You may have noticed that as I turn my camera, there's no blurring of the screen. I did go into my options, and I changed a couple little things. But the major thing I went down here and changed is I got rid of depth of field and motion blur. I don't like these 2 settings because they actually blur your screen. Another one I slightly changed, I don't know if I changed it in the first episode or when I changed it, but I brought the bloom intensity down because bloom in this game is very, very ridiculous. So that's kind of my settings that I just changed there, just so we don't have blurriness, so we don't have too much bloom. So you can actually see, and when you're moving around as fast as I do sometimes, the blurriness really gets to you. It makes you feel a little bit nauseous. Alright, so let's do the junction and get some cool prizes if we're able to. So when you load it up, it's like any other mission. You can see the rewards there on the side, as I showed previously. And you will come to a cool looking space station once it loads up here. Let's skip that cinematic. Don't really need to see it, it's just a ship flying in the space station. And apparently they have pledged their shadow life to defend the solar rails. You come to this screen, and if you're not able to go any further, you won't be able to hit E and confront the Spectre here. So we're seeing a Spectre on the other side of the room. That Spectre will fight us once we press E. So this time around it's a Rhino Spectre. We should be able to deal with him relatively easily, I hope. Heaven forbid. But he's like a Warframe that has a set that has been designed for him. He's an enemy, and we will fight him right now. Let's throw down a barrier because he's going to start shooting at us right away. Rhino typically has tons of health, so we may have to plug a lot of arrows into him if I can actually hit him. I prefer to play really defensive on these guys, especially with the Spectres, because some of the later Spectres are very difficult to deal with. But Rhino kind of went down, and he kind of just flopped over and died. Our Rhino, when we get a Rhino Warframe, will not be so weak. In the meantime, though, you can progress here, and now we can finally open the Junction. So very cool cinematic there of us like opening a dimensional gateway with some badass drums in the background. And that's kind of how it goes. So you get North Wind. Yeah, well, we'll see that screen here in a second. So the big thing about opening these rails is not only does it get you a bunch of new missions to be able to test for, and we just got a nice little mastery boost there, but we get some mods, which we haven't seen yet, which are fantastic mods. We get some blueprints, which will be very helpful. The Furus is a secondary weapon, which is fast firing, and Taxon will be our first Sentinel. So we will see. And then it'll show you a little cutscene of what you've opened up. We've opened up Venus, so we can start going through these missions in the next few episodes here. But in the meantime, I think, let me check to see. We've been going an okay amount of time. Could probably cut in the mastery rank quest, but let's take a look at what we're able to build here. So the big thing we do want to build is we want to build Taxon right away. We could build the Furus. Well, actually we can't because we don't have any alloy plate, which we'll be able to get on Venus, but we'll be able to build the Furus here soon, which is an okay secondary, but we really want to build Taxon because Taxon is a Sentinel, which will boost our damage and help us survive a lot. So we want to start building him right away. As you can see, it's going to take an entire day for him to finish, so it's pretty much as soon as you get him, start building him.
I've run diagnostic regressions. All systems nominal.
We can also throw on those damage mods, which we got. We definitely want to throw on Stormbringer onto our main weapon here, so you can get more damage there. You can even see that like weapons will actually get a little bit of electricity and whatnot on them when they get a damage mod. Most of the time anyway. And we also got a melee version for North Wind. Let's see, let's swap out probably Fury. We'll put Fury back on later, but for now we just want the extra damage and keeping healing your turn plus pressure point. Let's see. Could probably buff up some of these other mods here. I'm not going to worry super much about it right now. When we do get Taxon, he will go in this companion slot here, which has been empty until then, and I will show him off.
Operator.
Probably
covered in blood.
For the next few episodes, I'll be able to show him off. For now, we can probably try and rush through the Mastery Rank 2 mission, which shouldn't be hard at all. Let's do it. And next time we will probably... Ooh, trading access. Now that's pretty nice to get. Plus it'll also give us access to the bolter, which we wanted to craft. The bolter is a great weapon in the early game and in the late game if it's modded correctly.
Prove your ability with the sidearm. Eliminate all targets.
So we're going to be forced to use our kunai here, and I think we'll be okay though. Yeah. We just got those mods on there with all that damage. I think we'll be just fine.
Again.
Not many enemies. I don't think there's a time limit. There is a time limit, but a minute to kill a couple enemies. Simple. I say that, but watch. Just knowing me, I'll fail it somehow.
Ready yourself.
Okay. Come on. Show your pretty faces. So I can throw a knife in there. There we go. Alright, dealt with. Almost. Just basic Rainier enemies, we've seen enough of them, we've dealt with enough of them. Should be okay. And that finishes that.
A formidable performance. This test is now complete.
So, with our Mastery Rank 2
Another
tests
job
complete,
well executed.
we now have one loadout slot, which is great. We can create a new loadout. We got daily standing, void trace storage, and minimum mod capacity. The mod capacity is, of course, the thing that we really want when we're doing the level ups. But the unlocking new weapons is always good as well. So we'll take a look at the market, we'll go in, and we'll see if we can't purchase that bolt or recipe right away. Yeah, 15,000 credits, that's not bad. We can almost craft it right away as well. That's fantastic. The bolter or KRS through a lot of content. It's effectively automatic, I want to say crossbow, but it really isn't a crossbow, not in the traditional sense. But it's an automatic weapon that shoots bolts, which have travel time, but it's a fantastic weapon for Warframe, and you'll see why when we get the chance to use it. In the meantime, though, I think I will probably end off the episode here. I don't think there's anything else we really have to worry about. Next few episodes will be focused on clearing out all of Venus and going through all the different nodes, and maybe unlocking the Mercury Junction, which will be our next focal point. But there will be a lot of things that we have to do before that. And that will probably finish us off. So until next time, goodbye.